Let's go to the Jesus is a Palestinian issue. So Abed, was he a Palestinian?
He was a Palestinian. There's been bloodshed. There's been a genocide happening on the land Jesus was born on. They're dictating what's put in our history books. They're dictating what's put in our textbook. That's very unfortunate, but that's really an example of what we're up against right now.
Welcome to the revolution. As a lot of you know, almost all of you know now, we're doing stories and interviews here about why we need reform of our government, why we need a rebellion and peaceful revolution, etc. And one of them is control over our media that brainwashes us and does nonstop propaganda, right? And often on behalf of foreign governments. So we have an excellent example of that that we want to show you today. So let me go to the video first.
It's a similar situation with Bari. None of this is about them calling me out for anything I've said or haven't said. It's about Israel. Those two are very ardent Israel activists, which is fine. But they don't get to dictate how the rest of us feel about Israel or what we do with respect to our friends and our friends' opinions on Israel.
Well, that was Megyn Kelly saying that Bari Weiss, who now runs CBS News, demands that we all bow our heads to Israel. And the right wing has gotten sick of that and they don't want to do it anymore. And the left wing, of course, totally agrees. The people that don't agree are the establishment and, of course, the folks in Israel. So today, they wrote an op-ed in the Jerusalem Post, a guy named Zvika Klein, and he talks about how Bari Weiss is such a hero for giving us the correct information here in America. And so now he's celebrating that she has taken over CBS and is doing Israeli propaganda. I'm gonna give you some of the quotes here in a second. If I said the same things he said in that op-ed, they'd call me an anti-Semite. They'd be like, what do you mean pro-Israel people trying to control the media? Well, interesting, but in Israel, they totally admit it and celebrate it. So let's go to the Jerusalem Post. Here's his op-ed. The New York Times tried to cancel Bari Weiss. By the way, they didn't, she quit. And now she's running CBS and they're very happy about it. So Zvika writes in, I've been obsessively following every internal development at CBS News since Bari Weiss took over. The staff revolts, the leaked memos, the reorganizations, the public statements from unnamed employees claiming she's destroying journalism. The whole messy, dramatic transformation. Why? It's hard to say exactly. No, it's not hard to say. That's because you're obsessed with Israel. I mean, it makes sense, you're an Israeli. That part makes sense. The people obsessed with Israel that are pretending to be Americans, that's a different story. So that's why you care about it. And in fact, you're about to explain that. He says, maybe because she's one of the bravest journalists out there. That is hilarious. I will come back to that. Okay, one of the bravest journalists out there, maybe because she's actually making a change instead of just talking about it. Maybe it's the creativity, the willingness to blow up conventions and try something different. It's definitely also the fact that she's an American Jew and an American Zionist who's doing more for Israel than most of us. If I said Bari Weiss is an American Jew doing more for Israel than the people in Israel, Bari Weiss would call for me to get canceled. But there they are in Israel, obviously, duh. And look at what Klein is celebrating. He's like, she's blowing things up. I know, the Israelis love that. But then the funny part, she's so brave. There was a Saturday Night Live skit a long time ago with Martin Short, and they were joking around about, I forget what it was pro-Jewish or against anti-Semitism in Hollywood. And they were like, ooh, very, very bold. Okay. Oh, she's doing pro-Israel propaganda in American press. Very, very bold. I don't know anyone else doing that. She must be the only one. How could you think that's brave, brother? And creativity, that's the same slop we've been getting for the last 50 years. There's nothing creative about that at all. So, but you know why they frame it that way? Or he does in this op-ed? Because in their minds, they really believe, like they're like, oh, Israel's the victim. And when the American press says that these useless, non-human Palestinians were slaughtered and their 20,000 kids were killed, they shouldn't say that. They shouldn't say they're anti-Israel. The fact that they're reporting honestly about us is unacceptable. Anti-Semites, right? So they believe that. So they think the American press, for just barely sometimes reporting things that are half true, is unacceptably anti-Israel. When in reality, the American press is ridiculous. October 7th happens, they have a perfectly good reaction to that. outrage, 1,200 dead, 2/3 are civilians. I agree, that is horrible, horrible, right? Then Israel murders over 70,000 people, and I'll give you more of the stats a little bit later. And they're like, yeah, I mean, whatever, collateral damage, who cares? Yeah, it's not important, it's not important. 1,200 in Israel, the new Holocaust. 70 times for the Palestinians. Who cares? Whatever, collateral damage, who cares? Yeah, America owes Israel. That's what our press says. You think that's brave or creative? That is exactly the kind of propaganda we've been suffering under with Israeli control of our media the whole time. All right, Mehdi Hassan, by the way, made a good point. He said, the same thing I was saying earlier. Pretty sure if anyone in the US said this, they'd be accused of anti-Semitism, but it's the Jerusalem Post in Israel saying it. So now here comes more hilarity from Klein. He says, there are millions of people who wanted journalism that didn't treat them like idiots or bigots for asking obvious questions. Like, why do we owe Israel another 100 billion? Oh, he didn't mention that. People are exhausted by being told what to think instead of being given the information to think for themselves. Is this guy on the same planet? Okay, when you create a newsroom culture, he continues, where certain questions can't be asked, certain facts can't be reported, and certain perspectives can't be expressed, you're serving your staff instead of the public. I couldn't agree more. Good, we finally have agreement. That is literally every newsroom in America for mainstream press about Israel. The minute you ask, hey, wait, why did we give Israel $300 billion? They go, anti-Semite, you're not allowed to ask that question, you're fired, right? Why do you think nobody asks it on air? Because they know they're gonna get fired if you just ask a question. Hey, Israel wants a 20-year memorandum of understanding that would give them another $100 billion as America's 38 trillion in debt. How dare you ask that question? You're fired, right? That's been 50 straight years in American media. And this brother thinks that Bari Weiss is the one bravely asking questions. Why not slaughter more Palestinians? I was brave enough to ask it. They're asking that in every newsroom in America. All right, so now he talks about the people buying up the media, like Larry Ellison and David Ellison. Larry Ellison's the owner of Oracle. David Ellison, his son, now has bought CBS and gifted it over to Bari Weiss. And as he was buying free press from Bari Weiss, that was her company, he said that he overpaid because she was pro-Israel. That is amazing, okay? And he did. I just talked to another guy from the industry, and we were laughing about how much they overpaid her. So pro-Israel propaganda is rewarded with, in that case, $150 million, okay? So he says media owners shape the prism through which you will be consuming your news. They influence the culture, the hiring, the risk tolerance, what stories get pursued, and which ones get killed. Everyone knows this, nobody likes admitting it because it punctures the myth of editorial independence. Well, again, I agree with the brother, that is true. But again, if I said that about people who are pro-Israel who own the media, in fact, I did say that, and they put me on a top 10 anti-Semite list. But here in Israel, they're like, oh yeah, we gotta buy up all the media in America so we could take our junk propaganda for our terrorist state and shove it down their throats. Thank you for the admission, I appreciate it. He continues, Ellison made a bet on Weiss. He looked at what she built, looked at the audience she commanded, and decided that was worth something, worth bringing into CBS News, even knowing the staff would revolt. They did revolt, Weiss is still there. That tells you who has the power. Okay, Sherlock Holmes figured it out. Well, it's elementary, my dear Watson. The guy with all the money has the power. Whoa, I didn't know you roll like that, Sherlock. Okay, so we figured that out. But wait a minute, that's what, when we say that, you say we're Jew haters. Like, that's insane. By the way, guys, don't get me wrong, and don't get Klein wrong. All the people who own media companies in America are not Jewish, okay? There's a great variety, etc. So it's very complicated as to the groupthink that has created the culture in Washington and in national media. It isn't a memo. It isn't that they all work for Mossad or whatever. No, they have gotten to a point where so many people have been fired in the past for questioning Israel that the groupthink is no. And it doesn't matter if they're Jewish or not Jewish, etc. And by the way, there's tons of Jewish Americans who are opposed to the genocide of Israel. This isn't about religion. This is about one country wanting to control another country. It doesn't matter what the religion of that country is, doesn't matter what the race, ethnicity is. But here this brother is bragging about it. Like, yeah, we buy the media and then we do pro-Israel propaganda. It's very brave. He says, study what Weiss did, then go do your own version of it. Yeah, brother, don't worry, mission accomplished. A lot of folks have already done that. Why do they need all that propaganda? Well, so far at a bare minimum, Israel has killed over 70,945 people in Gaza. Probably the number is, not probably, definitely the number is much, much larger because there's thousands of people, maybe tens of thousands of people buried under the rubble because they destroyed almost all of Gaza. 20,000 children have been killed. Over 1,000 babies have been killed, under 1 year old. 1,009 babies murdered by Israel in Gaza. There was 36 kids, not babies, 36 kids killed in Israel. They said it was the new Holocaust. 1,009 babies killed in Gaza. They're like, who cares? Who cares? Stupid terrorist wannabes probably would have grown up to be terrorists. What are they treating Palestinians like they're humans? No, they're never gonna get a state. They're not allowed to exist. Well, what's your beef with them, the Palestinians? They might not allow us to exist if they ever had power, which they don't have any couple of hundred years from now. But you're not allowing them to exist. Aren't you committing the crime that you're complaining that might theoretically happen hundreds of years from now? Yeah, shut up. We already bought CBS and all the media, and now we're bragging about it and rubbing it in your face. America, you're not gonna get any honest news. Klein almost does like a dance about it. Okay, 21,000 children have been permanently disabled, 3,200 aid workers have died, 253 journalists have been killed, and more aid workers and journalists killed than all other conflicts in the world combined, because Israel is now a terrorist state. It murders. It murders at a much greater rate than Hamas does. It's killed 70 times the number of people, but it's not just the number of people. According to the Israeli press, their civilian kill ratio is 83%. Hamas is 67%. Hamas are terrorists because 67% of the people that they kill are civilians, so they are targeting civilians. Israel, 83% of the people that they have killed are civilians because they are obviously targeting civilians and have slaughtered tens of thousands of them. By the way, there is no ceasefire. That's a giant lie told to you by Israeli propaganda known as American media. So far, during the so-called ceasefire, Israel has murdered 425 Palestinians, wounded 1,200 people in a ceasefire. They've murdered 5 Palestinians a day since the ceasefire. Today they killed 14 people, including 5 children, because all they do is slaughter. They're a terrorist government that has bought off a ton of our media and is now bragging about it. So that's what's happening here in America. And in Israel, they're kind of laughing at us, going, ha, there's nothing you could do. We got your government and we got your media. Thank you, Bari Weiss, for being so brave and courageous. Please. All right. So now that same media complaining about our next guest. Now joining us is Abed Ayoud. He's the executive director of American Arab Anti-Discrimination Committee. And they put up a billboard in Times Square saying that Jesus is a Palestinian. So that is actually an uncontroversial comment because Jesus was born in Bethlehem, which is in the West Bank. So that would make him a Palestinian. But of course, outrage ensued. Abed, welcome to the show.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Great seeing you again.
Yeah, good to see you again, brother. All right, so tell us what the reaction you got was when you guys put this up.
I mean, the initial reaction, surprisingly, was overwhelmingly positive. It wasn't until a lot of people that opposed our messaging, a lot of people that were against our messaging, began organizing and began flooding us with comments and phone calls and emails. But the majority, honestly, the majority of responses that were positive, and this is coming from people with different political leanings and views. So from the left, right, middle, all over the place. But it's as anything to do with Palestine. There are reactions out there that were pretty egregious, that were pretty negative and threatening. We seem to get under their skin, but that's our job. That's what we're supposed to be doing, and we shed light on an issue. And I think we accomplished what we wanted with the billboard.
Yeah. So I like that most people were positive, and that makes sense because most American citizens now sympathize with the Palestinians and are outraged by what Israel's doing and outraged that we're funding it. Of course, that's not the main issue. The main issue is the politicians and the media that pretty much basically work for Israel. So did Netanyahu somehow get aggrieved about this?
Well, Netanyahu got upset about a prior billboard that we had in September calling for Israel to get kicked out of the UEFA campaign. His office, and he directly got involved, demanding that the billboard we put up then be taken down. And it just said Israel's committing genocide. And actually the billboard went up about a half hour after the ruling of genocide was made back in September. But he directly got involved. That's the billboard right there on the screen. He got involved, the White House got involved. Not only that, the Israeli Foreign Ministry purchased advertising space on the same billboard to sandwich us in. So you would have 2 or 3 ads from the Israeli Foreign Ministry, then our ad, and then 2 or 3 ads from them. It's incredible that they would go to those lengths to attack and silence an organization really that has a tenth of the budget that they have, if that. So again, it seems to be working. The public pressure, public opinion is turning against them, and they're trying to occupy every space, even our billboards at this point.
Yeah. So look, when you touch them where it hurts, they of course howl, right? So part of the way that we got rid of apartheid in South Africa was to get them banned from the rugby competitions, right? And so if you get them banned from the World Cup and other soccer competitions and Eurovision, et cetera, that's going to slightly inconvenience Israeli citizens, and maybe it'll make them think twice about murdering 20,000 Palestinian children. Like the deaths of the children are no big deal apparently to the Israelis. But oh my God, what if we couldn't watch our favorite Israeli singer or our favorite Israeli soccer star in an international competition? And of course, that's also why they're so mad about the boycott, divestment, and sanction movement, because the other thing that worked in South Africa was sanctions. And so, but let's go to the Jesus is a Palestinian issue. So Abed, was he a Palestinian?
He was a Palestinian. He was a Palestinian. What the important part about that billboard as well is, let's say even if you disagreed, even if you didn't want to call him a Palestinian, we still have to agree he was born in the Holy Land. He was born there. He was born on the land where there was bloodshed for the past 3 years and for the past 70 plus years. So there's no way that you can disagree of the location of his birth, and they can call it whatever he wants. At the end of the day, there's been bloodshed. There's been a genocide happening on the land Jesus was born on. In the Holy Land, and many Americans have been quiet about it. So hopefully this sparked the conversation, it sparked the debate, and we knew it would. We knew that this was the angle going in, that the media wasn't going to cover Palestinian Christians during Christmas time. That's too boring of a story for them. So we had to come in with something, to something in their face, something that hasn't been done before, and that was the purpose, and that's what we accomplished of it. And yes, we'll stand by it. As you said, he was born in Bethlehem, that's in Palestine. So we're gonna use that logic and say Jesus is Palestinian.
And Jesus of Nazareth, and Nazareth also in Palestine. Right. And so, in fact, I wonder what the Israelis would have done to Jesus if he was born in Bethlehem these days. Well, I don't have to wonder too much because that's in the West Bank, not in Gaza. But nevertheless, today there was a story out about how the IDF beat Palestinian children in the West Bank, and in fact they did that, and the settlers at the same time beat the crap out of an older deaf Palestinian gentleman. In fact, we have video of that, Abed. Let me show you what's happening in the West Bank, the land where Jesus was born, the terrorists that are running it now. Watch.
After being beaten a first time, he lies hunched on the ground, praying the attackers will leave. Instead, more blows, kicked in the face by one and then struck down by 2 others. He is now hospitalized with a fractured arm and broken jaw. The Israeli military and police say they detained 3 suspects in connection with the attack.
Yeah, those suspects will face no justice at all. They'll be released. The courts in the occupied territories, when the Israelis do crimes, have a 1% conviction rate. 1%. 99% of the time, they're like, oh, you beat an Arab halfway to death? Good job. Congratulations, right? And of course, the IDF, when they are charged or the settlers are charged, of course, always get off. But if it goes the other way, the Arabs almost always found guilty. So there's the land of Jesus, Abed. So what do we do about this? I mean, the American government under Biden and Trump work for Israel. Most of the American media work for Israel. So how do we get to a place where the Prince of Peace can be born in that land again?
Look, I think the American politicians are working for Israel, the media, but who's not working for Israel is the people. I think through this experience with the Billboard, we've realized how much public opinion really is changing. And there's an opportunity there. And I know we've talked about that, and you've been talking about that for a while now, that we're past the two-party system, we're past the traditional way of politics. And there's new realignments happening. And this is gonna be a core issue heading into the midterms and heading into the 2028 presidential election. I don't think the American people have the appetite and want to stomach doing Israel's dirty work anymore. And our pathway to stopping what's happening, stopping the genocide and the occupation, is to stop the occupation of DC and stop the occupation of our US government. And I think we're getting there, and I think we're winning on many levels. But I know at the same time, I say that, and Israel's just expanding and getting more aggressive, but it's a long fight, and we have a plan in place. We just have to continue speaking up and continue committing ourselves to it.
Yeah, so I want to ask one more question, but first I want to let everybody know. Remember, American Arab Anti-Discrimination Committee, that's ADC, and the website is adc.org, okay? So Abed, so Jesus was of course Jewish, born in Palestine, right? And what Israel says is, oh my God, if we're just such a wonderful moral democracy and we're running the occupied territories like angels, and it's these no good dirty Palestinians that every once in a while mind being ruled, and then we put our boot back on their neck and there's nothing they could do about it, and etc. But if the Muslims were to rule the Jews, well, they would kill us all. But wait a minute. Weren't Muslims in charge of the whole area for a long time? Did they kill all the Jews?
No, I mean, they're missing a big part of history. And I don't think the greatest threat to Christianity right now in the US and in the Holy Land is Zionism, is the Israelis and the state of Israel is the greatest threat to Christianity. And I think people are starting to realize that, and people are starting to open their eyes to that. Muslims and Christians have lived side by side. It's very cliche, we've been saying that, but whenever you see an issue like this, whenever you see what you just saw in that video, people are starting to dig a little deeper and understand what's really happening. And the American public hasn't been told the truth. The world hasn't been told the truth, but now it's out there, and you can't put toothpaste back in the bottle. This is there. This is out there, and people are seeing it for what it is and seeing that for who they are.
Yeah. And by the way, of course, Muslims ruled that area for well over 1,000 years, and Muslims, Jews, and Christians lived there relatively peacefully.
Well, when you're running the textbooks and you own the textbooks in this country, and you're determining what kids are learning in high school across from California to New York, you're going to remove that part of history. I mean, that's what we're up against. When we say they're occupying every part of US life here, they're even occupying our high school classrooms. They're dictating what's put in our history books. They're dictating what's put in our textbooks. That's dangerous. So that part of history you're talking about, people aren't going to learn it unless they're getting it from outside sources or they're getting it from a show like yours and others. And that's very unfortunate, but that's really an example of what we're up against right now.
Yeah, and by the way, if you think that, that's loose talk, it isn't. Robert Maxwell was the Mossad agent that stole America's nuclear secrets. And he then later bought the publishing companies that produced textbooks for American schools.
And most schools get their textbooks from two states, California and Texas. It's easier for a state like Michigan to buy the overstocked books in California and cheaper than it is to produce and publish their own. So California and Texas are providing textbooks for most of the country, and go read what's in those textbooks. You will see nothing about that 1,000+ year part of history you just mentioned. That's because of who's occupying our textbooks, our classrooms, and our everyday life here in the US.
Yeah, I'm gonna say one last thing here at the end. So Abed's the head of the American Arab Anti-Discrimination Committee. And Arabs are not all Muslim. There are a lot of Christian Arabs, etc. But Turks are not Arabs. We're basically a different race, background, etc. But 99% of Turks are also Muslim. Now, back in the day, there was a lot of Christians and Jews, etc., that lived in the areas that the Turks ruled, the Ottoman Empire. And we were occupiers, so you can be honest about yourself and it doesn't harm anything, right? And you don't have to be biased. And we occupied the Arabs and the Jews. And so were the Turks super fair? No, they charged extra taxes for other people, they ruled the place, etc. But did they go around just, oh, well, there's the Muslim leaders, and at the time they controlled the caliphate, the Islamic caliphate. So did they kill all the Jews? Not only did they not kill all the Jews, they went and rescued 400,000 Jews from the Spanish Inquisition and brought them to the Ottoman Empire, where they lived safely for 500 years. So when you hear the propaganda that Muslims are savages who would just kill all the Jews immediately, that is historically 100% untrue. They're lying to you on purpose to justify what Israel is doing to the Muslims today. So Abed, thank you for fighting back and doing it in a clever, interesting way that has caught a lot of people's attentions. We appreciate you and your organization, brother.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Appreciate you. All right, guys, we're gonna take a quick break here. When we come back, the conversation, we're gonna have Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Aguilar on. He was in Gaza delivering food when he realized the atrocities that Israel was creating. He's come back and told everyone, including Congress, about it. He's been absolutely heroic about it. But what he's gonna talk to us about next is ICE doing some of the same strategies that they learned from Israel? We'll come back and talk about that.